Welcome to the Skeptic Zone, the podcast from Australia for science and reason.
Yes, it's the Skeptic Zone podcast, episode number 919 for the 17th of May, 2026. Richard Saunders coming to you from Sydney, Australia. And before we start, a big shout out to Hans, who wrote to me recently to compliment me on the show. Thank you, Hans. And to tell me about a certain Ruth Dunn. And she was somebody who cared for polio-stricken children in the years before vaccine. Always interesting to find out about these little gems from history. Thank you very much, Hans. And while we're chatting about other things, before we get into the contents of this week's show, don't forget there are a couple of conventions coming up. Of course, we have SciCon in Buffalo, New York. And this is celebrating 50 years of the Skeptical Inquirer. And, a huge part of the skeptical movement, of course. But for those of you in California, coming up on Friday and Saturday, June 26, June 27, in Oakland, we have Skeptical. And I'm very, very pleased to say I'll be speaking at Skeptical about Mind, Body, Spirit, Mind, Body, Wallet. Lots of other guests as well, and you can get your tickets at skepticalcon.com or just look up Skeptical, Northern California's Science and Skepticism Conference. But let's turn our attention to this week's episode of the Skeptic Zone podcast. We're going to kick off with a review of the books of James the Amazing Randi. Now, these books were a huge influence on me when I was getting into modern skepticism. I remember reading Flim-Flam from cover to cover. Now, the books we're going to be looking at are Houdini, His Life and Art, The Magic or the Truth about Uri Geller, Flim-Flam, Test Your ESP Potential, The Faith Healers, The Magic World of the Amazing Randi, The Mask of Nostradamus, another fine book, James Randi, Psychic Investigator, Conjuring, also, and I think this was more or less online, an Encyclopedia of Claims of Frauds and Hoaxes of the Occult and Supernatural, and finally, a little-known book, The Teachings of Carlos. After that, You Can Count on Adrienne, and this week, Adrienne is joined by special guest Dr. Angie Mattke, Dr. Angela Mattke, as they roam around Canada and end up at the Royal Tyrrell Museum of Palaeontology. And I've been there twice now, and I would go every year. I'd go every week. I think it's one of the best museums I've ever been anywhere in the world. The dinosaurs on display are just stupendous. And what fun it is to eavesdrop in on Dr. Angela and Adrienne as they wander around the museum in Canada. Then we have a little bit by Maynard, where he's going to be talking about his work many years ago with the late and much lamented James Valentine. We talked about James Valentine a few weeks ago here on the Skeptic Zone, a very loved broadcaster. Well, way back in the 80s, Maynard was a guest on James Valentine's afternoon TV show. Find out more. Find out how you can help Maynard coming up a little bit later on in the show. Then to round off the archives, we have a look into the recently released, uncovered, unearthed files from the US government pertaining to UFOs. And there was much fanfare for about 2 days. And now everybody seems to have forgotten them because, quite frankly, and not to spoil anything, which I will anyway, they're not that interesting. The UFO industry was somewhat disappointed, and so were we all. Anyway, find out more in the Trove segment at the end of the show. Now, somebody's trying to get into the studio. Hang on. What's going on here? Henrietta? Hello? Are you going to come in? You have to come all the way in. You can't just stand in the door. Well, That's enough for me right now. I hope you're having a good weekend no matter where you are around the world. It might be a good day to head to a vintage market, for example. I like rummaging around these sort of things. You never know what you're going to find. It's sort of like Trove. If you're doing that, then I hope you have a great time. But I think right now it's time for me to run down the stairs and have a nice big mug of hot chocolate because it's a bit cooler today. While I do that, I hope you enjoy the Skeptic Zone. It's hard to believe that this year will mark 6 years since the death of James, the amazing Randi. James Randi died on the 20th of October 2020 at what we might say, the ripe old age of 92. I really got to know James Randi from around 2007, though I had met him on occasions before. And he was a good friend and mentor for many years. Now, apart from all his other achievements, James Randi was a prolific author. And I have with me on my desk here a stack, a wealth of books by James Randi. And I thought I would review them quickly to give you an idea and hopefully whet your appetite and encourage you to go out and read these books yourself. They were, for me, an invaluable early grounding into skepticism. Before he became known as the world's most famous investigator of paranormal claims, he spent decades as a professional stage magician and escape artist, billed as James the Amazing Randi, or just the Amazing Randi. When he retired from performing at around the age of 60, he turned his full attention to investigating the claims of psychics, faith healers, astrologers, and assorted purveyors of what he affectionately called woo-woo. He founded the James Randi Educational Foundation, administered the famous $1 Million Challenge, which I was a part of for some years, which was a standing offer of $1 million to anyone who could demonstrate genuine paranormal ability under controlled conditions. And he really did help shape the modern skeptical movement. Now, before he retired, he began writing about magicians and other things. And in 1976, he co-authored the book Houdini, His Life and Art. And this was with Bert Sugar. Now, I don't have this book. I think it's the only one of James Randi's books probably that I don't have here on the desk. It was a biography of Houdini, and it was, I guess, sort of a template for James Randi in a sort of a way, about a magician who understood deception and how people are deceived by way of entertainment when it comes to magical tricks and how they can deceive themselves. Now, this book covers both Houdini's extraordinary professional career, his escapes, his showmanship, his global fame, and his personal life. The book focuses on the professional and private life of Houdini. It's a warm and respectful tribute, and you can feel Randi's genuine reverence for his subject throughout. And one day I look forward to finding a copy for myself. Now, next on our list is a book called The Magic of Uri Geller, as originally published in 1975, and then republished under the name The Truth About Uri Geller, 1982. And I have that right in front of me now. It's a little bit worn for wear, well thumbed, as you might say. And my copy is so well thumbed I've had to put extra binding on it. It's only the paperback. And this was an eye-opener when I read it all those years ago. And it's got an inscription here, to Richard from James Randi. Now, this book marks Randi's entry into the business of investigating living charlatans. we might say. Uri Geller has asserted that he performed paranormal feats. Randi challenged this directly, exploring Geller's background as a stage magician and expanding on how Geller's spoon bending could easily be reproduced by any magician using sleight of hand. And I've been doing more or less the same routine now for over a quarter of a century. The book also explores other so-called miracles by Geller, including design duplication, as when Geller would get somebody to draw something on a card and then by mystical feats reproduce that drawing. Of course, that's just a variation of a trick. Again, the trick is called design duplication. The book is important because it establishes the template Randi would use for the rest of his career. Treat extraordinary claims with extraordinary scrutiny. Demand proper controls, and when the controls are in place, watch the miracle evaporate. Randi gained his international spotlight in 1972 when he first publicly challenged Geller's claims. And this book is the extended, documented version of that challenge. It is methodical, at times gleefully combative, and remarkably thorough. Geller sued Randi for it more than once, which Randi seemed to regard as a badge of honor, although it did stop him doing many things when he had to pay a lot of money to defend himself in court. And instead of Geller simply demonstrating he could do all these wonderful things, he decided to sue people. The next book we have on our list is Flim-Flam, Psychics, ESP, Unicorns, and Other Delusions, published in 1982. Flim-Flam, let me have a look. Here it is. Flim-Flam, to Richard Saunders, my valued Aussie pal. James Randi, 28/11/2010. Wasn't that nice? And this book is a real eye-opener. It's one of the books that is simply recommended for any new skeptic, or any skeptic, in fact. If Randi had a masterpiece of a book, I guess this would be it. Flim-Flam is his broadest, most ambitious work, a sweeping investigation into the full landscape of paranormal claims as they stood in the early 1980s. Randi explores and exposes what he viewed as the outrageous deception widely promoted in the media, and calling researchers to account for their failures. He argues that we have been badly served by scientists who fail to follow the procedures required by their training, and shows how sloppy research was followed by rationalizations of eventual failures. The chapters are Flim-Flam, Fairies at the Foot of the Garden, which talks about the Cottingley's fairies. This was the case where two young children in the early part of last century had cardboard cutouts of little fairies in the garden, took photographs, and fooled many people, including Sir Arthur Conan Doyle, that these fairies were real. All at Sea, Into the Air Junior Birdmen, The Giggling Guru, A Matter of Levity, The Paper Chariots in Flames, The Laurel and Hardy of Psi, The Great Fleece, The Medical Humbugs, The Will to Believe, Off the Deep End, Gods with Feet of Clay, Put Up or Shut Up. And I remember reading this many years ago, and I just couldn't put it down. It was so interesting. So many adventures in the paranormal, and so many ways to test the paranormal. For example, there's a lot in this book about water divining. So much in this book. The book covers psychic claims, ESP research, so-called Curlian photography, astrology, alternative medicine, the list goes on. The introduction was written by Isaac Asimov, which tells you something about the scientific community's regard for Randi's work. It's sharp, funny, and often infuriating in the best sense. It's the sort of book that makes you genuinely angry on behalf of the public being deceived, but then makes you laugh at the sheer audacity of the fraudsters. One reviewer put it like this: if Martin Gardner was the godfather of skepticism, Randi was the crude but effective enforcer, someone who preferred to debunk by empirical means while hiding no disdain whatsoever for the charlatans he was dismantling. Flim-Flam remains one of the essential Randi texts and one of the foundational documents of the modern skeptical movement. And of all the books I'm going to be talking about today, if I was to recommend one above the others, I guess it would have to be Flim-Flam. Next on our list, we have James Randi, Test Your ESP Potential, a complete kit with instructions, scorecard, and apparatus. It's a larger book, paperback, with a funny story attached, which I'll get to in a moment. Now, this book is sort of an odd one out with all the other books published by James Randi. It's really a kit. It's really like a little box of tricks in a way. The idea is that readers can conduct their own ESP tests using the included materials and thereby discover what Randi has been arguing all along, that no one scores above chance. Now, the back page here, the back cover, I should say, here at last is the means by which the interested layman can experiment in order to draw his own conclusions regarding the existence of extrasensory perception and evaluate the extent and the significance of his own, his friends, and his family's powers of ESP. This testing kit provides all the necessary instructions and materials for conducting conclusive at-home experiments in a credible, unbiased, and scientifically sound manner. Clearly delineated purposeful rules are offered that guide the amateur investigator through the process of experimentation and aid him in avoiding common experimental pitfalls that often confound the findings of even the most dedicated of researchers. The experimental apparatus and research aids supplied in this kit include 5 sets, including one for the subject as well, of specially designed cards with bold, easily recognizable symbols, the traditional circle, lines, triangle, square, and star, pictures of 5 different animals, and numbers 1 to 5, represented both in dots and by digits. Now, I'll stop here and have a look inside the book itself, and indeed many pages here have these cards with perforation so you can tear out the pages and make up the cards yourself. And indeed, I'm finding triangles, equal sign, circles, stars, boxes, lots of dots, numbers, as said on the back of the book, and yes, animals. Well, you have a zebra, a bird, a fish, a snake, a spider. So the idea is you rip out all these cards and make them up and use them for experimentation. But as Randi said to me one day, you know that book I wrote? I said, yes. He said, when you hold the cards up to the light, which I'm doing now, you can see right through them. Oh, dear. So in order to use these particular cards in any test, you'd have to, and as is shown on the cover, you have to have a barrier between you and the subject, or the subject and the person sending the telepathic information or whatever. But Randi thought that was quite funny that the publishers would do that. The book also includes a statistical table devised by a Stanford University mathematician, which provides a foolproof method of assessing whether or not the test results are significant. Oh, and here it is. Here is the table itself, with the number of calls or guesses, the number of hits needed for significance. Now, I don't know how hard it is to get a copy of this book, but certainly if you were to do any similar tests, you could just use playing cards. But it is still valid today. It is still, because it has instructions, complete instructions on how to carry out a paranormal test. Next on our list is The Faith Healers from 1987. To Richard from Randi, yes, autographed. And this book is, it's just an incredible read because it really makes you angry. When I was reading this book, and my edition here again is all frayed, it really makes you angry at the audacity and the outright villainy of the people mentioned in this book. Now, some have argued, and I might be one of those, I don't know. It's hard to judge these things, but some have argued this is Randi's most important work. Randi and his team of researchers attended scores of so-called miracle services and were often pronounced healed of non-existent illnesses and maladies. Lots of undercover work. They witnessed firsthand the tragedies resulting from the widespread belief that faith healing can cure every conceivable disease. The ministries they found were rife with deception, chicanery, and outright fraud, with self-anointed ministers convincing the gullible they had been healed and often charging them for it. One of the most memorable paragraphs in the book talks about Randi and his crew searching the trash left behind by these travelling bandwagons of healers with their big tents and discovering discarded checks for $5 because it wasn't worth the while of the organisers, the faith healers, to process $5 checks. The book examines the reasons for belief in faith healing and the catastrophic results for the victims of these hoaxes, including profiles of a highly profitable psychic dentist and the so-called Vatican-approved wizard. What makes The Faith Healers distinct from Randi's other books is the seriousness of the harm involved. People were dying. Children were being denied genuine medical treatment. Randi is not amused here at all. He is genuinely and justifiably outraged, and the book carries that moral urgency throughout. Again, as I say, it really makes you angry when you read this book. It is investigative journalism, and it led directly to government scrutiny of several prominent televangelists. And we cannot forget the famous case of Peter Popoff, where Randi appeared on the Johnny Carson show to expose that fraud. Next on our list, we have The Magic World of the Amazing Randi from 1989. And this essentially is an overview of famous magicians and was more or less intended for children. And my copy, if I tilt the cover correctly into the light, has a hologram of a dragon right on the front cover. Still works after all these years. And amongst the biographies of certain famous magicians at the time, including Penn and Teller and Banachek, are mixed instructions on how to do simple conjuring tricks. And for some reason, my copy has embedded in the pages, which I just found, the top quarter of the King of Hearts playing card. I have no idea why. The Magic World of the Amazing Randi. Now, in 1990, Randi wrote The Mask of Nostradamus. And this is one of the most interesting books from James Randi. In this book, Randi turns his attention to one of history's most enduring and lucrative frauds, Michel de Nostradamus, the 16th century French seer, whose vague quatrains have been confidently reinterpreted after virtually every major world event for the last 500 years. Randi's approach is both historical and analytical. He examines Nostradamus' life in context and traces the history of how his prophecies have been retrofitted to events they were never meant to describe, and dissects the mechanisms of vague prediction that allows believers to find confirmation of almost anything. It really is a journey, this book, because Randi made the journey himself to visit the places where Nostradamus lived. He looks at the original French the book was written in, or the quatrains were written in, and provides far better interpretations and translations. And you don't hear much about old Nostradamus these days. He was very popular in the latter half of last century. It comes up every now and then. People say, what does Nostradamus predict for 2026 or probably soon 2027 and so on. But a very worthwhile book and a good lesson in investigation. Now we have James Randi, Psychic Investigator from 1991. And as Randi always told me, it's James Randi, Psychic Investigator. Yes, Randi. And this book is the companion to the British TV series, James Randi, Psychic Investigator, which was in the same year, 1991. And for many years, it sort of disappeared. I remember seeing it probably in the early 90s somehow, or at least a couple of episodes. And then many, many years later, around about 2001, 2002, I was digitizing many videotapes from the late Barry Williams, who used to be the editor of the Skeptic magazine and the former CEO of the Australian Skeptics. And on his tape somewhere, he had the series, James Randi, Psychic Investigator. It was okay. It wasn't the best copy. It worked. So I digitized all those. And at some stage, I uploaded them to, I can't even remember where. And they were copied and re-uploaded many times over the internet. And that's why, until very recently, that's why you could see it all over the place. You could find it. People had uploaded it to YouTube or this or that or the other. And I knew it was the copies I did because it was identical to those old videotapes that I digitized. But more recently, I have discovered better examples of some episodes have been uploaded to YouTube and other places. Nevertheless, have a look. Google James Randi, Psychic Investigator, or just James Randi, Psychic Investigator, 1991, UK TV. That will do it. And you can see this series. And the accompanying book talks about the production, making the TV show, and then goes into more detail about some of the claims. And I very much identify with some of what Randi says in this book because I, too, was involved in paranormal TV shows of testing psychics and whatnot. And some of the comments he makes in here were very, very pertinent. The next book on the list is a very big volume. I don't have it here on the desk with me, called Conjuring from 1992. And having spent several books dismantling fraudulent magic, Randi now turns his attention to celebrating the genuine article. Conjuring is subtitled Being a Definitive History of the Venerable Arts of Sorcery, Prestidigitation, Wizardry, Deception, and Chicanery. The book is about magicians in history, telling their stories, often in the context of strange deaths and careers on the road. And in fact, I have found my copy in one of my back bookshelves. Here it is. A big volume, Conjuring, with a wonderful artistic cover featuring Harry Houdini. And on the back is a very famous poster of James Randi, the amazing Randi, the levitating of a living woman in midair, with a woman laying back as Randi passes a hoop over her. And interesting, he's wearing a medal on his chest in this picture, dressed in the classical magician outfit of a dinner jacket with a cape. And it is a sumptuous volume full of memorabilia and photographs of the conjuring arts. Also, in the catalogue, we'd include an encyclopedia of claims, frauds, and hoaxes of the occult and supernatural from 1995. Although I don't have a physical copy, I think there probably still is a copy online. I seem to remember Randi put that as a HTML hypertext book on his website at randi.org, but I'm not sure where that would be today. It wouldn't be too hard to find. And this is really an A to Z reference covering the spectrum of supernatural claims from astrology to the abominable snowman to Gene Dixon's record of failed prophecies and so on. It's sort of like the Skeptic's Dictionary in a way, and it's a good resource. Now, what's not normally included in the list of Randi's books, which I have a copy here, from the late 80s, The Teachings of Carlos. And I've talked about this book on the Skeptic Zone before. The incredible pronouncements of an ascended master, channeled through Jose Luis Alvarez. Copyright 1988. Copyright. And this was a book that accompanied the tour of the famous Carlos hoax in 1988. And, it's autographed. James Randi, alias Carlos. There we go. So Randi put this book together, and it's supposed to be the whimsical writings or the mystical insights of Carlos, the channeled spirit. And as Randi said, he just wrote it as a ridiculous send-up of New Age terminology and woo and stuff like that. The Teachings of Carlos, page 45. Laughter is love. Try to love someone without laughing. Try to laugh without ever having loved. That's it. And it's sort of the Deepak Chopra quote generator before the Deepak Chopra quote generator. Page 31, for example. All planes point to infinity. The truth of this is elementary geometry. The question to be answered is, which infinity? Which, indeed. If there are a large number of infinities, then there are an infinite number of infinities. I will repeat that because it is so important. If there are a large number of infinities, then there are an infinite number of infinities. Existence on all planes is made up of discrete increments. Call them bits of the here and now. These soon become the back, there, and yesterday, and so on. Or, looking at it from a more optimistic point of view, the up there and tomorrow. What is time itself but another space in which to perform? Okay. Or an answer to a seeker. The seeker asks, how are we aware of the good in the right way? And Carlos answers, ignore it. Simply ignore it, and it will come to you. That is all that is needed. You must be much more than you are. What you are now is a small fraction of what is. You must go forth in one direction, and one direction only. Your choice is very narrow indeed. The Teachings of Carlos. And not many people have this book. It's a very rare book to come across, this one. My books written by James Randi are now piled high on the shelf next to me. Now, these books help me understand that some of the biggest fraudsters out there don't know they're lying. The most insidious are the ones who are true believers, the psychics who have convinced themselves that their cold reading is genuine, the faith healers who believe in their own divine gift. And with these people, it is almost impossible to argue them out of their position. And if you think about true believers with the capacity for most harm these days, I guess it would be the various practitioners of alternative medicine who sincerely believe that their magical sugar water, for example, homeopathy, can, amongst other things, vaccinate people against deadly diseases. What skeptical library would be complete without the works of James the Amazing Randi? And I think you can still get most of these titles via Amazon or eBay or somewhere else, surely, to this very day. Some may be hard to come by. And I think for the benefit of humanity, I think there's a case to be made for all these books to be made publicly available on maybe the archive website or something like that. But I'll leave you with one more pronouncement from the The Teachings of Carlos, of course, written by James Randi. Page 34. If there were one thing only that I would want to leave you with, it is this. Look within, look around, look underneath. You will find it. You can count on Adrienne with Adrienne Hill.
Hello everyone. I am right now in the Royal Tyrrell Museum in Drumheller with my now best friend, Dr. Angie Mattke. And she's here for the first time in Drumheller. What are you thinking so far?
This is stunning. It is so wonderful. I'm kind of a dinosaur nerd, and I love this.
And we just stepped in. We haven't even really got it started. No. So stay tuned. We'll find more.
We met the curator in the lunch area.
Yes, same fellow who gave the behind-the-scenes tour the last 2 years to us. So that was really nice to say hello to him.
And was completely startled when he found that Eugenie Scott was on that tour.
And he seemed to remember he kind of lit up at the table, didn't he?
He certainly did. He certainly did. So I can't wait to see more of this amazing museum.
Welcome to a world that existed 500 million years ago below the surface of the Cambrian seas. These animals are among the first complex creatures to appear in the fossil record. Above, with 3 tail fins and big eyes, swims Otorrhea, too large to worry about being attacked. Descending to the surface of the seafloor beneath you, a school of Marella, the most common of the shale's creatures, is diverted by the larger trilobite Olonoides. Nearby, the carnivorous worm Luisella telescopes from its burrow to threaten the cone-shelled bottom dweller Haplophrenitus.
That there looks like a slug that's flying towards us.
Yes, but isn't that our earliest progenitor ancestor?
Yes.
That's amazing.
I know. Well, that was an unexpected surprise.
It really was. And it's helpful to be reminded that humans in rare cases are actually worms.
Yes. Can you describe what we just saw?
It was an unexpected scale model of the seafloor of the Precambrian period. And the creatures themselves were fantastical and 12 times the size of their actual bodies. And as the narrator was telling the story, they lit up different sections of it, and it really brought that time frame to life. It was amazing.
Yeah, and they were under our feet, and they were in front of us. They were all around us. It was very cool.
It really was very special. I don't think I've ever seen a presentation like that before.
And we almost missed it. There was just a little arrow into a room. It was a collective gasp when we turned the corner.
It really was. And I think a lot of people may have missed that.
I saw lots of people turning around.
So did I.
So we found another surprise here. What have we found?
We have found an amazing little cave with the bones from plesiosaurs and baculites and other plesiosaurs.
They're kind of surrounding us.
Yes, it's a recreation of the Bear Paw Sea, and it's like you're walking through the sea, and they even have the lights set up such that it looks like light filtering through water. It is beautiful.
Yeah, good description, actually. That is what it's like. And you have been under the sea, so you would know.
I have indeed. I'm a very avid scuba diver, and this is very much what it looks like, except for these plesiosaurs. I don't think I'd go in the water with these.
Well, we've left the museum, and we are now at the hoodoos. And what a beautiful day to be visiting the hoodoos. They're not very big, and if you don't know what a hoodoo is, it is a rock formation as a result of wind and rain erosion of the softer earth. Would that be right, Angie?
It's a softer limestone with a hard cap, and the hard cap protects the strata underneath, and the wind blows it away gradually, and they will eventually collapse. But in the meantime, they make really remarkable structures. The sky is so beautiful. There were a few puffy clouds earlier, but they have cleared up, and it is a beautiful, beautiful blue sky. And these hoodoos are really, they're not that big, but they're impressive all the same.
I agree. And the scenery behind them is fascinating as well. What do you see, Angie?
There are some beautifully austere rock strata that's revealed. It's got some light vegetation on top, no bushes, no trees, but it really is remarkable. This is where they found the dinosaur bones. This is one of the world's destination sites for dinosaur enthusiasts, and these rock strata give you no reason why you would ever doubt that. It's beautiful here.
And one of the layers that we see, they say, is volcanic. It's the white layers, volcanic ash, and then there are black layers that are coal seams. This has been in the past a big coal mining area, though it has long been shut down in this area. And we're just standing in front, it's windy and a little bit cold. It's still not quite summer here yet.
No, not at all.
So we're standing in front of an interesting sign that talks about what the indigenous people here used to view these hoodoos as. Angie, what does it say?
Well, the word hoodoo originates from the Hausa language of West Africa, and it means to arouse resentment, produce retribution. And hoodoo was a distinct magic practice that was introduced to North America in the 18th century. And it's apparently different in nature to voodoo, which is a different practice, I guess. So Aboriginal peoples used hoodoo to refer to evil supernatural forces, according to the government of Alberta, Canada, and the Royal Tyrrell Museum.
Yes.
And some believed that these structures were actually giants that were turned to stone by the Great Spirit due to their evil deeds. And it's easy to understand because of the weird shapes that some of these have.
They look purposeful, don't they?
They do indeed, yes.
They don't look human, I don't think.
I agree. But how would we know what giants are supposed to look like?
Yeah, and you could imagine one encased in one of those.
You certainly could. You certainly could.
And there's the striations at the bottom as well. There's different colors, lots of sort of yellows and browns, golds, and a little bit of red, I think.
Oh, yes, there is. And Alberta has really done a very good job because this rock layer apparently gets quite slippery when it gets wet. And so they have helpfully installed scaffolding sorts of stairs that are make it much more accessible for folks to take a 360 view of the whole area.
Yes, it's really well done, and I keep bringing people here, and they keep enjoying it.
I don't have any doubts why. This is really special,
and I never tire of it. I will just keep bringing people here because every time I see something different, and it's a constantly changing landscape.
Indeed, even the sky is different than it was when we got here. It's much clearer now. It's absolutely beautiful.
And we are in that sort of dusky time, that sort of prime light for photography. So I do have my camera and took some nice shots of Angie.
Oh, we took beautiful pictures of each other.
That's true. I guess that's all for this report because we're going to head home now. And thanks for joining me, Angie.
Well, thank you very much. But I was told that there's a horseshoe canyon on our way home.
Oh, my goodness. I forgot about that. So should we talk again?
Yes, maybe we will.
Well, we're back from a relatively short car ride, and we're at Horseshoe Canyon right now. Again, it's windy and a bit cold. But this is our final stop before heading home back to Calgary. I'm exhausted. What about you, Angie?
It has been a full day, and I'm pretty tired too, but what a wonderful day.
Describe Horseshoe Canyon to the listeners. It really is an unexpected surprise in the middle of the prairies.
Well, you definitely said it. So as we're driving from Calgary to Drumheller, there's a pretty breathtaking descent into the area around Drumheller. But this is in the middle of the prairie. There is a canyon that was made around 20 or so thousand years ago, where during the glacial times as the glaciers were melting and there was a relatively rapid runoff that eroded away this canyon that is truly stunning. It's completely unexpected. It is surrounded by farmland, and just in the middle of this prairie, there's a giant gash in the ground. It's amazing.
Must have been made by aliens.
It's the only logical explanation. It is quite windy, it's chilly, but you can so clearly see the strata, and there are even some representations of a type of coal I had not ever seen before, where it had burned from either natural or man-made, human-caused reasons, and they brought some large examples up to place among the landscaping so you can really truly appreciate the different types of rocks that you can find. And there's some really helpfully informative signs up here too. It's really special up here, and very cold.
And very cold, and I think that means we need to get back in the car because the wind just picked up big time. So thanks so much for spending the day with me, Angie, and I hope you come back and visit soon.
I can't wait. Thank you so much.
Until next time, this is Adrienne Hill and...
Oh, Dr. Angie.
From Horseshoe Canyon
in beautiful Alberta, Canada. Thank you, Adrienne.
I am so brain dead, I can't come up with what to say.
Here's Maynard's spooky action at a distance.
Hi, skeptical folk. Maynard here on the passing of East Coast media legend James Valentine, who was known across the country for his work on children's shows in the 80s, ABC in Sydney and across the country in the 90s, and up to now a really good lunchtime presenter on ABC Sydney.
Live free of domestic guilt, to embrace your inner slob and just lie back and relax.
On his passing, I thought, well, high time. I finally looked at what was on that tape that he gave me that has been under my bed since 1987. I got the Australian Television Archive to digitise this because it was a 1-inch open reel video format, which is the reason I hadn't done it up to now, because there's only like 12 of those players in the country left now. And it turned out to be, it's about 7 or 8 on the afternoon show in 1987, the first year it was broadcast. And this certainly shows James Valentine to be the consummate professional that he was.
Hi, welcome back, and it's time now to present Mayhem with Maynard. Oh boy, why did I ever start this?
I'm goofing off and carrying on, and he's holding these segments together quite well.
Well, that's the Maynard, an extremely dangerous-looking dance. If you're going to invent your own, perhaps the Damien or the Justin, I'd keep it a little bit simpler than that.
I'm going to make them available to everybody eventually, but because I have Patreons, and the Patreons are the people who basically paid for the digitisation of this tape, so you'll all see it eventually, but you'll be able to see 30-second snippets of it for free at patreon.com/Maynard. Become a Patreon because there's heaps of other stuff there, lots of DJ mixes, photos and antics that I get up from time to time.
Now, we've decided to form the world's smallest big band here, Maynard. This one is called In the Mood by Glenn Miller.
Glenn Miller was probably the Bon Jovi of the 40s.
And you'll be kept up to date at maynard.com.au, where there are links to the Patreon there anyway, about when they will be available for everyone to have a look at, but only after the Patreons who have hit the can for this. Much thanks to James Valentine and the whole team there at the afternoon show for giving me this tape back in 1987. And finally, it's seen the light of day. That's maynard.com.au or patreon.com/Maynard.
What is the optimum length of time before changing the sheets on a bed?
When you can't sleep. When it's reached a point where you're going, I really can't sleep.
Thanks, James.
Maynard, could you keep still? We want to watch Ghostbusters now.
Sorry.
Time once again to dive back into the archives, no matter where they are from around the world. Normally at trove@trove.nla.gov.au, the Australian archive for newspapers going back decades and decades and centuries. But this week, we're going to a different .gov. Oh yes. We're going to what's being called at the moment the Department of War from the United States. Why? Because just the other week, the Department of War, oh yes, first released UFO files. Oh my goodness me, if you go to the Department of War website and you look up the top, there's even a little tab there on the menu, UFO. And when you go there, it looks like something out of a high school project. It's a black, basically a black background with white text. Why? Why? I guess because it looks like the X-Files or something. And we have a statement here by President Trump. Based on the tremendous interest shown, I will be directing the Secretary of War and other relevant departments and agencies to begin the process of identifying and releasing government files related to alien and extraterrestrial life, unidentified aerial phenomena, UAP, and unidentified flying objects, UFOs, and any and all other information connected to these highly complex but extremely interesting and important matters. God bless America. And just down the page it says Directive. In response to President Donald J. Trump's directive for transparency on U.S. government information regarding unidentified anomalous phenomena, UAP, the Department of War, DOW, with support from the Office of the Director of National Intelligence, ODNI, is overseeing government-wide efforts to expeditiously find, review, identify, declassify, and publicly release unresolved UAP-related records and historical documents in the federal government's possession. This is an unprecedented, historic undertaking that requires coordination between dozens of agencies and the review of tens of millions of records, many existing only on paper, spanning many decades. Given the scope of this task, the Department of War will be releasing new materials on a rolling basis as they are discovered and declassified, with tranches posted every few weeks. The materials archived here are unresolved cases, meaning the government is unable to make a definite determination on the nature of the observed phenomena. This can occur for a variety of reasons, including a lack of sufficient data, and the Department of War welcomes the application of private sector analysis. More on that in a minute. Information and expertise. DOW will continue to conduct separate reporting on unresolved UAP cases as mandated by statute. Under this administration, and administration is spelt with a capital A, that's interesting, we will pursue the truth and share our findings with the American people, and even some Australians. And finally, we have one more statement here, cleared for release May 8, 2026. Statement: the Department of War is in lockstep with President Trump to bring unprecedented transparency regarding our government's understanding of unidentified anomalous phenomena. These files, hidden behind classifications, have long fueled justified speculation, and it's time the American people see it for themselves. This release of declassified documents demonstrates the Trump administration's earnest commitment to unprecedented transparency. Signed, more or less, United States Secretary of War Pete Hegseth. Now, there are thousands of individual pages in this release and some videos, and I'll cut to the chase. It's not very interesting. It's just not very interesting. It's just lots of pages from decades ago, from the 40s, the 50s, and so on, some more recent. Some of it is redacted. And the photographs that we can find, because there's a little handy tool here, so we can only search for, say, photographs, or we can search for PDFs or videos and so on, are mostly thermal images. They're black and white. There could be a dot in some of them. I'm looking at one now at random, and there's a little black smudge near the center of the picture. But sadly, and if they want transparency, then I don't know why they did this, the vital data from the screen is missing. It's been redacted. In other words, the altitude, the time of day, the location. Now, right, you could argue for sensitive military reasons, but what this does is it robs people like Mick West from being able to make a proper analysis. Now, Mick West, especially with the videos, looks at the data from the screen. He can tell the height of the drone, for example, taking the video, the speed, and so on, and make proper calculations about what the object in question could be. And Mick has done this very successfully in the past with many so-called startling examples of UAPs or UFOs, and using Mick's terminology, showed that these items are more or less mundane and not extraordinary. But it seems to me the majority of the files available for download in this first batch of releases are in the form of old correspondence and old reports. Mixed amongst them, though, are some newspaper clippings. And what would a Trove segment be without newspaper clippings? And here's one, and what is the year? 1952, July the 6th, a newspaper called Sunday Graphic. I wonder where this is from. Nevertheless, it is a very dramatic front page with an artist's rendition of a landed flying saucer. Headline, The Most Amazing Flying Saucer Story of Them All, by the man who saw it take off. And under the artist rendition here, eyewitness Herr Linke himself directed the artist to produce this vivid impression of the flying saucer as he saw it in the clearing. Beside it stand the two members of the crew who took off in it shortly after. All right. Now, just imagine a clearing in the forest with a classically shaped UFO with a funny sort of dome cylinder on top and two figures nearby. And the next image is presumably Herr Linke with a young lady. They saw the flying saucer, Oskar Linke and his 12-year-old stepdaughter. There you go. Are flying saucers a Russian invention? Western intelligence officers are now trying to answer this question following sensational reports by 48-year-old ex-mayor Oskar Linke, who escaped from the Soviet zone. Linke has sworn an oath before a judge that he and his daughter saw two metal-clad figures and a 50-foot saucer with a 10-foot conning tower take off from a forest clearing 4 miles inside the Russian zone. Full story, page 2. And just before we get to page 2, here's a clue. They're advertising here some medication, and the price is in shillings and pence. So I guess this is from the UK. This is further attested to by the page after having cricket scores. However, this is a lengthy article about the UFO. I won't go into it, partly because the story, the page of the newspaper is folded over on itself somewhat, so some of the story is obscured. Other digitized clippings here throughout the files from a magazine called Look, Volume 16, Number 13, June 17th, 1952. The Truth About Flying Saucers. One of America's leading astronomers goes into his laboratory at Harvard and disposes the flying saucer myth. He adds simple instructions for making flying saucers in your own kitchen. Well, that's an interesting article. Random clippings here. The New Yorker dated the 6th of September 1952. Something in the Air. Again, another story about weird things in the sky. And we even have a copy here from, 1966, from July 1966. Flying Saucers, International Flying Saucers, which seems to be a magazine, only 50 cents, including an advertisement on the back page for Flying Saucer Convention. Oh, wow. in Reno, Nevada. More random clippings here. Here's the Oakland Tribune, March the 25th, 1966. Flying saucers are popping up all over. One shot by man in Maine, with cartoons. There's a cartoon here of a flying saucer over a city. Everybody's looking at it with a caption, "Let's see the Air Force hush this one up." Such headlines as 40C flying saucer pics on show, objects in sky. Brewer welcomes UFOs, landing sites available. And from Toronto, we have a report, now those flying saucers come to Canadian skies. Yeah, I guess you have to dig a little bit, but there are some interesting things in these files. After all, some of these clippings I think I will keep. I've downloaded the whole kit and caboodle, but honestly, a lot of it is simply wasting file space on my system here. There's no point in keeping it, apart from some interesting clippings here. And quite frankly, I can always download it again. Anyway, all these files are for you to enjoy if you go to the website. I'll add a link in this week's show notes. Oh, there you go. And of course, you can have a look at all those files for yourself. But I'll leave you with another example. There was a video floating about, or still images. No, I think it's a video, probably both, of what they call a chandelier-shaped UFO. It's like a UFO with lots of spikes coming out from it. And we have artists' rendition of this amazing metallic flying object that looks like something from the knights of old, which they would swing around their heads. But as Mick West shows quite conclusively, this is all a matter of reflection and diffraction and effects caused by the lenses used and the aperture used to film distant bright objects. Is the truth out there? Maybe. Are boring files out there? Certainly, with some interesting things sprinkled about. But if anybody out there is really hoping for disclosure, don't hold your breath. If you go to the Department of War's website and look for UFOs, well, you never know. You never know what you might find. Thank you for listening to the Skeptic Zone podcast this week. Thank you to those people at PayPal and Patreon who contribute to the show every week or every month via your micropayments or sometimes chipping in. Much appreciated, and it does keep the show ticking over. Will the Skeptic Zone make 1,000 episodes? That's in the lap of the aliens or the gods or fates or, well, we just don't know. I hope so. With your help, maybe that will happen. And, of course, a big shout-out to all my reporters who help me so much to keep the Skeptic Zone going week after week, including my wonderful checker who checks my work every week just to make sure I haven't made any spelling errors, which I do frequently. And just before I go, don't forget, if you're coming to Nottacon here in Sydney in July, and you know of a secondary or tertiary student who could benefit from the wonderful scholarships on offer, which could pay for most, if not all, of their ticket, please head for skeptics.com.au, and look for the link there right on the page. You'll see Nottacon plus Skepticon 2026 scholarships. And my snoops, my spies tell me there are still scholarships available. So head over, have a look, and if you know a secondary or tertiary student, or if you are one and you're thinking of coming to Nottacon plus Skepticon, this just might be the ticket for you. But until next week, until episode number 920, this is Richard Saunders signing off from the Skeptic Zone studios here in Sydney, Australia.
You've been listening to the Skeptic Zone podcast. Please visit our website at www.skepticzone.tv for episodes and show notes with links going back to 2008. You can follow the Skeptic Zone on Facebook, X, TikTok and YouTube by clicking the links at our homepage, together with links to support the show financially via Patreon or PayPal. The Skeptic Zone is an independent production. The views and opinions expressed by our guests are not necessarily those of the Skeptic Zone podcast or any other skeptical organisation.
Yeah. Oh, I know. Until next time, this is Adrienne Hill, leaving the bad lines for the prairies.
Badlands.
Oh, what did I say?
Bad lines.
Oh my God! He's going to use this as an outtake, I'm sure. No.
Bye, Richard.
Bye, Richard. I'll figure something out. I'll make it work.
Yep.
I don't want to try it again. My brain's dead.
Yeah, I get it. Bye.